I think financial independence is a huge trap, and over the course of the next short while, I'm going to explain to you why. I've personally tasted this for myself in my own life. I've gone full circle with this thing, and I've also seen it play out in countless other lives as well. In fact, I just spent the entire last week speaking to a bunch of you, and I just want to say to those that did, thank you so much for that opportunity. It was incredibly amazing for me to do. I didn't really know what to expect going into something like that, but I just want to say to everyone that I was just honestly blown away. Every single person I talked to was so nice, was so interesting and cool, and I honestly just feel like if we all got together in a room and hung out, that everyone would be friends and we'd have some really interesting conversations together. So thank you for that. I learned so much from it. And so this video today, this stuff I want to talk to you about, is actually a direct result of speaking to so many of you. It just created so many ideas inside of my mind that I'm going to try and combine into one main thread here. And that's because in these conversations, a common theme kept coming up, a common problem. And that was related to these three things: the idea of finding financial freedom in your life, the idea of finding meaning and fulfillment in your life, and not selling your soul along the way in order to somehow achieve all three of these things. So in other words, it's this question of how can we find financial freedom while also finding meaning and fulfillment, while also being able to practice a craft or a trade or a passion or express the artwork that's inside of ourselves that brings us through all of these things. So strap in, buckle up. I want to cover a lot of ground today, and hopefully it should be pretty interesting. To begin, let's start off with an idea that I think will ruffle some feathers. And that idea is: people use financial independence as a way of putting off finding themselves. Now, here's what I mean by this. Now, this is very, very important. Many people, myself included, initially got interested in the space of financial independence because we were struggling with this idea of what we wanted to do with our lives when we grew up, or as we were growing up. You know, when you're asked as a kid, what do you want to do when you grow up? Either we did not have an answer to that question, or we wanted to do many different things and not just stick to one lane. So, you know, we were the type of people who were sitting in a classroom and the teacher would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up, little Steve?" And all the other kids would say, "Firefighter, doctor, police officer, business person," all that kind of stuff. And we either said, none of the above, or all of the above, which is kind of the same as saying none of the above, because in today's world, it is very different to do many different things. You're very much encouraged to pick one thing and specialize into that for the entirety of your life, at least in the traditional workforce. Now, what we did know was what we did not want to do. And that was work a soul-sucking, time-sucking, and just generally unfulfilling 9-to-5 job. We knew there was more to life. We knew there was more to us. We just did not know what that meant exactly. But then once we found out about financial independence, our logic was that, hey, you know, using this financial independence stuff, I can just kind of deal with my current situation for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And then at that point, once I am financially free, then I can move on and do that thing that I actually want to be doing. But do you see what I just said there? I said, at this point in the future, then I can do what I actually want to do. But the problem with that is, remember what I just said before that. We don't really know what it is that we actually want to do. And I'll explain what I mean by that. First of all, I promise you that reaching financial independence, having all the time in the world, is not magically going to make you figure yourself out. It's not magically going to provide you the answers to the question, what is it that I actually want to do? What is it that actually provides me meaning and fulfillment in my life? Because I can direct you to a whole bunch of cases where people have reached financial freedom, had all of the time in the world, only to feel so much more lost than they were before. I think there is a clear reason why this phenomenon happens, and it will make more sense as we continue along here. Now let's back up a little bit for a second and talk. When we're talking about, what you want to do, you might say, well, now actually, Steve, I do know exactly what it is that I want to do. I have a very clear plan of what I'm going to do down to the T once I am financially free. It's definitely possible that that's true, and I myself thought that a few years back. But I would push back on that a little bit and just caution you and say it might not be what you actually think it is. Because I think if you truly knew what it is that you desire to do so badly in this magical future time, you would be doing it right now. This brings me to my next point, which is that while you are putting off finding yourself, while you are putting off questioning yourself, discovering yourself, figuring out what type of person you want to be, what type of life you want to lead, what actually matters to you, you are doing yourself a disservice in the here and now today. By subjecting yourself to spending the majority of your day in a working environment that you feel like is suffocating you, I believe you are wronging yourself. Several of you that I spoke with highlighted this to me, but one person in particular said it in such a way that I think really hits the nail on the head. They said once they went into their corporate workplace to start working for the day, they felt like a lesser version of themselves. It was so strange. Outside of the workplace, they would be able to speak normally, be able to form full sentences, speak with confidence, but in the workplace they found themselves tripping over their words. It was as if it sapped their very confidence. And I think this is why the phrase soul sucking is so accurate, and it just exists as a phrase because it aligns with this exact experience. This person knew they were a vibrant individual with a ton of potential and could be completely confident outside of the workplace, but once they were in there, it was like they were a completely different person or a lesser version of themselves. Now you might say, well, yes, Steve, that's exactly why I'm trying to become financially independent, so I can get myself out of this environment. I know I actually have potential inside of me. I know I'm a vibrant human being. I just need to pull myself out of this garden and plant myself in another garden where I can grow properly. Fair enough, but think about what you're actually doing. You're saying, I will subject myself to this bad thing for now and for a while so that I can one day leave this bad thing. I will subject myself to suffocation just so one day I can hopefully breathe. But let me ask you a very important question. What if you could breathe right now? What if you did not have to subject yourself to this? And here's an interesting way to frame it that's a little bit different than the workplace. Would you subject yourself to a toxic relationship, to a toxic love life, just to then eventually get out of this relationship? Well, of course not. You would just avoid that relationship. You wouldn't go into it. That makes no sense. But hang on a second, because those aren't exactly the same situation, right? Because we need something from this job, you might say. Well, yes, I would love to just avoid it and not subject myself to this working environment, but I need something from this working environment. I need the money, I need the security, I need the resources that this thing provides me. And that's, of course, true. We all do. We all need those things. But do you know what else we also all need? We need love. We need companionship. We need sex. And so, for the exact same reason, people subject themselves to bad, toxic relationships because they need something from it, because they believe that this is the only place to get what they need. I believe your career path, your workplace environment is very much the same. Many things in life are like this. There are many universal principles that apply across the board to many things, and this is no different. We separate them and we complicate them with layers and layers upon abstraction and terminology and all that kind of stuff, which can be useful, or it can just overcomplicate things and actually have a way of hiding the truth. So I'm going to be very blunt with you. I would argue that you do not believe yourself capable of receiving what you want to in the way you want to. So you receive it from the only place that you think you can. If you are in a toxic relationship, you do not believe yourself capable to be loved in the way that you want to, so you receive it from a bad place. If you are in a soul-crushing work environment, you do not believe yourself capable of receiving money in the way that you want to, so you receive it from the only place you think you can, a bad place. Now, at this point, a whirlwind of objections may rise up inside of your mind. Yes, but, no, but, this but, your but, my but. Butts everywhere, everybody's butts. Look, there is a reason that I can say this with such confidence and such conviction, and that's because it's easy for me to say. I'm sure we're all familiar with that phrase. It's easy for you to say. And that's because, yes, it is easy for me to say because I am in the position to say it. And that's because I've solved this problem. That's why it is so easy for me to say. I had this exact problem. I went through this exact process. I had these exact same thoughts. And when I came out the other end of it, I realized that the answer or the solution was different than what I initially thought it was. And this solution is my next point. Now, this is going to be a bit of a long-winded rant, so please prepare yourselves. This is kind of the culmination of all of the conversations that I had. This idea only came into my mind from synthesizing a whole bunch of different points, things I've read, people I've talked to, experiences I've had in my own life that culminated in all of the conversations that I had with you guys, that it just kind of came out of me when I was speaking to one of you. And I realized how powerful it was, and I believe the person on the other end of the call did as well. And from that point forward, I kind of realized that this was some pretty interesting way of looking at things. So I'm about to share all of it with you. Now, it begins with this book that I just recently started reading, Private Government, and you can see that the subtitle is How Employers Rule Our Lives and Why We Don't Talk About It. Now, this book actually is not a book. It is a series of 2 lectures that were given by this woman, Elizabeth Anderson, who is a political philosopher, and I believe she gave them at Princeton. And the lectures were so interesting and well received that they wanted to turn them into a book, and some other people have provided some extra commentary that's in the book. Now, the main thesis that she's advancing in the book here is that workplaces, especially large or corporate workplaces, basically constitute a form of government that controls the internal organization. And this form of government is a private government. Now, what does that mean? What is a private government? Well, we're all pretty familiar with public government. When we talk about government, this is what we're talking about. The public government. It is the organization that we supposedly, democratically elect representatives who then go and serve in the government, hopefully in our best interest to represent us in that way and kind of, speak to the will of the people. In workplaces, though, this is very different. They have much more of a private government structure. And what Elizabeth means by this is that it's not democratic in that sense. It's actually much more like a dictatorship, because there's a very strict hierarchy structure, and the person above you in the organizational chart is effectively your boss, and they get to tell you what to do. And if you do not listen to them, there are usually serious consequences for doing so. So it's a private form of government that has a lot of control over your life. Now, this is actually kind of besides the point. This is not the point that I want to talk about. This is not the point that I'm making in this particular video. But contained within her lectures, there was this other point that I want to pull out that's going to be much more relevant for what I'm about to tell you. And that is an investigation of the workplace and how it has changed throughout our last couple 100 years. So, if we go back in time a little bit, now, and I just want to also preface this by saying this will be a pseudo-history lesson. I am not a history expert. This is not academic level. So, it's to illustrate a general point, okay? Everybody relax. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, which was the last major change to the workplace looked very much like this. You had high rates of self-employment and business ownership. If we imagine business ownership like a circle, it was broken up into many, many, many small pieces. It was very decentralized. And the reason this was the case is because people generally lived in small communities, and in these communities, you found people who all practiced a trade or a craft or something in some way to serve their community. So you'd find the potter, you'd find the cobbler, you'd find the blacksmith, innkeeper, tavern keeper, horse stabler, doctor, list goes on and on. Everyone kind of practiced a trade or craft, or they might have worked under someone as like an apprentice or helped out with their family managing this small business. So that was kind of the way the workplace was. Then the Industrial Revolution came along, and the Industrial Revolution had this massive impact on the workplace. And that's because it introduced this idea of scale, this idea of manufacturing scale. It massively disrupted the manufacturing side of the economy. And the reason it did this was because you could now produce many, many things at a massive scale. And the effect of this was you could lower the cost of many, many goods. So, for example, if an industrial manufacturer of bread could produce a loaf of bread for 1 cent, whereas the baker down the street could only produce a loaf of bread for $1, you are going to be able to massively undercut him on the price of your bread. So as a result, most people started buying these more industrialized products because they were much cheaper, which meant that these small businesses could not compete and they went out of business. But then these business owners who just lost their business needed to find work. They needed to find a way to earn a living now. But the only jobs that were kind of available were in these industrial factories and manufacturers. So what the Industrial Revolution did as a result is it caused self-employment rates to go down, and it caused business ownership to become much more centralized. Okay, that was the last major change to the workplace on that type of scale until today. And that's because I believe we are currently just in the very beginning of the biggest thing to happen to the workplace since the Industrial revolution. And the reason why I believe that is the case is because of this thing that I'm sure I'm not the first one to come up with this word. It's just how I've kind of said it in my own head. It's how it makes sense to me. It's not that exciting of a term. But I think of this as the information revolution. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, I believe things are flipping back in the other direction, whereas self-employment rates are going up and business ownership once again is becoming much more decentralized. Why is this the case? It's the case because in the same way that the Industrial Revolution massively disrupted the manufacturing side of the economy, I believe the information revolution is massively disrupting the information side of the economy. It's massively disrupting the information economy. What is the information economy? Probably didn't even think something like that exists, but it does. But the reason we don't really think it exists is because up until now, it has been controlled by a monopoly. And that monopoly is the education system. Think about this for a moment. Even today, but more so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago plus, if you wanted to obtain information related to almost anything, but more specifically, how to have a career that would provide you with a livelihood, if you wanted to obtain that type of information and training and skills and education, you had to obtain it from the education system, or more specifically, from a college or university. They had a monopoly on this information. But now, this monopoly has been massively disrupted, okay? But let me just paint a picture of how the information economy existed, still kind of exists today, but is in the process of dying. So let's say you had 100,000 people who all wanted to obtain information about, like I said earlier, about basically information related to earning a living in the world as it exists. So they go to a university to do this. And these 100,000 people pay this education institution $50,000 each. 100,000 people each pay $50,000 to a college or university for a 4-year degree to obtain the information from them. As a result, they've collectively spent $5 billion and hopefully obtained some pretty good information. Now here's part of the problem. There's two big problems there. Here's problem number one. The information that they received is a lot of the time actually not of the best quality. And the reason that is the case is because the person you're receiving your information from at a college or university is not necessarily a direct practitioner of the very thing that you're trying to learn. They might know this subject in an academic sense. They might know it in a theoretical sense. They may even have a little bit of practical experience, but they're not a true direct practitioner of this information. On top of that, they may not have solved a problem in their life that you're currently trying to solve in yours, or they don't have the life outcome that you want in your life. Their life and where it led to may look very different from what you want your life to be. So the quality of information may not be the highest. And you've spent a lot of money for this information as a result of the monopoly over it. Now, I believe the information economy has been split wide open, and this monopoly is in the process of being massively disrupted. And that's because of the internet and because of the connectivity of it and the connectivity of social media. Now, there's so many misconceptions about social media. I've had tons of them. But in my process of actually participating in it for several years now and building a successful career by leveraging it, I've come to realize what it actually is. And all it is a medium through which to broadcast information that anyone can use. Information does not just mean text, it does not mean audio, it does not mean video, it does not mean music, art, whatever. It means all of these things. It doesn't have to just be education. Information is the same thing as media. Let's equate those two things. So social media is just a way to broadcast information that anyone can use. And because of that, here's what is now happening in the information economy. Let's say you have those same 100,000 people who are looking to obtain information. Instead of going to one entity who has a monopoly on this to obtain that information, let's say these 100,000 people end up finding 1,000 individuals, different individuals broadcasting different information about a whole bunch of different subjects on social media. And so as a result, you basically get groups of 100 people going to these 1,000 individuals. And the reason they go to these 1,000 individuals is because they've been broadcasting the information on social media, which means that they've been showing that they are a direct practitioner of this information, and they've either A, solved a problem in their life that the person searching for information is currently trying to solve, or B, they have the life outcome that that person wants. Or both of those things can also be true. So they go to this person to learn information from them. And because they want a specialized, maybe more high-touch, hands-on transmission of that information, they're willing to exchange value for it. They're willing to exchange money for it. And so they say, I will pay you, this person, $1,000 to teach me that thing. Now that sounds like a lot of money. $1,000 to give to some person you've never met before, who's not some official institution of information. How could I possibly give that much money to this person? Well, you just gave 49,000 more dollars to an official institution and got shit information as a result. So more and more people today are realizing that actually giving this random person $1,000 is way better for me, because guess what? The information is of a much higher quality. So in this type of transaction, everyone massively wins. The person looking for the information massively wins because they get much higher quality information. And the person transmitting the information massively wins as well, because in that hypothetical transaction I just highlighted, the person getting the information saved $49,000 in 4 years of their life, and the person giving the information got $100,000 in exchange. Everyone massively wins. This is the information revolution. This is the next big disruption, I think, of the workplace and the economy, and it's happening in the information world. It's happening in the education world. It's happening in this thing I think of as the information economy that I think most people didn't even realize existed until now. Now, okay, that was a very long rant. I just said a bunch of stuff. Let's pause for a second, because it might have sounded like a very, very, very long way of saying you should become a YouTuber or an Instagrammer or a TikToker or a blogger or something like that. No, absolutely not. I don't think you should become any one of those things. I am not any one of those things. I don't want to be one of those things. You can. I mean, if you do, that's totally fine. You can be one of those things. But that's not the point that I am making here. I'm not saying you should become those things. I'm not saying that's the solution to everything we've talked about thus far. I'm saying the solution is to become and be you. Now, what do I mean by that? You have, I have, we all have a very specific recipe that makes us us. I have been through a set of life experiences. I have had a series of thoughts. I have met, consumed anything and everything that's ever happened to me, basically, makes up this recipe that I am today. And the same goes for you. Now, the beautiful thing about this recipe is the only place that somebody can get it is from you. There may be similar ones out there. Different recipes may be inspired by different people. Well, of course, they definitely are inspired by other people. But none of them will be quite like yours, just like none of them are quite like mine. And this is a very beautiful and a very powerful thing. And that's because whatever problem you are currently trying to solve in your life, or a problem that you may have faced and surpassed, you can trust and you can guarantee that there are basically these people out there who exist in the world that you probably have never met, which are like past versions of yourself that relate to you very much because they like your recipe. It's kind of similar to theirs. Not the exact same, but it's similar. And they're facing either the same problem you're facing, or they're trying to solve one that you've already solved. And the ability to go from point A to B, to go from I have a problem to I solved a problem, that line in between those two things is very, very, very valuable. Because think about it. If you currently have a problem right now, wouldn't you think information on how to get past that problem would be very valuable to you? Now, it's very important. I'm not saying that it should just skip you right through the problem. That's not a good thing. We don't want to rob anyone from the experience of going through the problem themselves. That's essential experience. But if it could save you from making major mistakes or just show you a quicker way to solve that problem, that's valuable information. We would all very much appreciate it. We would all very much appreciate a map that tells us how to get to where we're going, hopefully with some, nice comments and suggestions and recommendations on that map. I believe that every person has a very, 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 very small piece of the puzzle that makes up the tapestry of the humanity, and our puzzle piece fits in very closely and very well with the other people who also have similar recipes to us, who relate to us, who can connect with us, and we can serve those people. Everybody has their piece, and their piece is valuable. And so the currency of this economy I was describing earlier, this information economy, keep using the word information, maybe I need to think of some different words to break it up a little bit, but the currency of the information economy is information. And that puzzle piece everybody possesses is a unique set of information. Do you see what I'm saying here? You can participate in this information economy because by the laws of heaven and earth, you have information that no one else can possibly have. And that's a valuable thing. Now, as I said before, everyone wins in this new information revolution. And one of the reasons that the information distributors win, and as a side note, most people who participate in the information economy are both distributors and consumers of information. It's kind of like a cyclical system, which makes it very nice. Everyone's supporting and consuming off of each other. It's great. But back to what I was saying. One of the big ways that the information distributors win is that it unlocks the opportunities to receive a high income. And a high income solves almost all problems that you can experience in life, save a few. And you probably have limiting beliefs that are holding you back from achieving one. Again, I can say this easily and with confidence because I very much did. I very, 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 very much did. So what do I mean by these two things? A high income solves a lot of problems, and you probably have limiting beliefs that prevents you from achieving one. Let's start with number one. How does a high income solve a lot of problems in life? Death. Money obviously can't solve this, at least with our current understanding of biotechnology, but hey, maybe that's in the process of changing. I don't know. I don't really know what that world looks like, though. Happiness, money can't directly solve. Love, money can't directly solve. This is where finding yourself very much comes into play and becomes very important, though. But pretty much everything else, having a high income solves it. But you probably have limiting beliefs related to this. You probably have limited beliefs related to you being able to achieve what you may think of as a high income. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to attempt to draw them out inside of your mind right now. And that's because I'm going to say to you, ready for this? A high income is multiple six figures minimum. Objection. I can't do that. Objection. That's not realistic. Objection. That's unethical. Objection. I would have to sell my soul to do that. Objection. Not everyone can do that. Okay. Those are some pretty good objections. So let's maybe go through them and kind of tackle them one by one. So to the first one, I can't do that. There's a really cliche phrase, but some cliches are cliches for a good reason, and I'm going to paraphrase it here, but it goes along the lines of, if you think you can, you're right, and if you think you can't, you're also right. To the second, saying that's not realistic, well, expecting water to boil at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, that's realistic. That's a realistic expectation. And the reason why that's realistic is because it 100% aligns with the laws of heaven and earth, physics, all that stuff as we know them. Whether or not you can earn a high income has nothing to do with the laws of physics. It has nothing to do with objective laws. It has everything to do with subjective information that you tell yourself inside of your own mind. Now to the third, saying that it's unethical to earn a high income. I would actually argue that it actually must be an ethical thing. It actually is an extremely ethical thing to earn a high income. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to this rule. And the exceptions are people who are outright intentionally deceitful, dishonest, scammers, bad actors, people who steal, essentially. Yeah, that's not ethical. I'm not talking about them. In all other cases, in order for money to be exchanged, the person exchanging the money must believe that they're exchanging money for something that is at least as valuable as the money that they were giving. And ideally, as a good way to practice business, and the most successful businesses generally give people more value than the money that is being transacted. So as a result, it means that if you earn a high income, it means that you are generating a large amount of value for society, also known as helping people, serving others. You receive money as a byproduct of doing that. So it must be ethical. And if you're getting a lot of money, it means you are serving a lot of people or serving them in a very impactful way. Now to the fourth, saying that I would have to sell my soul to make that kind of money. This is a very common thought of people who are artistically inclined. It's a thought that I very much am sympathetic to. To this, I would say that's only true if you make earning money the goal. You can instead make serving others the goal. As I just talked about, money comes as a byproduct of serving others. So you have these two approaches to, I guess, making a goal of earning money. You can just make earning money the goal, or you can make serving others the goal. Two of them can lead to earning a lot of money. Only one of them is going to lead to keeping your soul intact. And to the fifth objection, saying not everyone can do that, that's actually probably the most accurate one. However, I would make a slight adjustment to that to make it even more accurate. And I would change it from not everyone can do that to not everyone will do that. Let me explain what I mean. I know these days it can seem like everybody has some type of career related to social media. Everyone is an influencer, blah, blah, blah. But think about this for a second. Let's say there was 1 million people who had a career on social media. I have no idea how many there are, but that's a lot of people. Now, though, think about that. There are something like 4.5 billion internet users. So that means like 0.02% of internet users are earning a living from it, are making a career off of it. That's an extremely small amount of people. And it will never be a huge, massive percentage of this. And I'm not saying it should be. I'm not saying this is something for everyone. I'm just saying if those 3 things that I mentioned at the beginning of this video are the path you are looking for in life, this is the way that I have discovered for myself to solve this. And I believe this is a way many, many, many people also can. I want to be clear again. I am not saying that path is to become a YouTuber, TikToker, Instagrammer, blogger, influencer. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to discover and then become yourself, and then to broadcast this unique set of information contained only in you out on social media. And what this will effectively do is it will send up a flare into the night, and this flare that you send up will be of this very specific color that is unique to you and you alone. And everyone who is walking around in the night looking for information, looking up in the sky at all of these flares, some of them, not all of them. You do not need to speak to everyone. In fact, you only need to speak to a very specific and small number of people who, again, connect with you and want the information that you and you alone have. They will come to you to get that information. This is the power of this information revolution. You do not need to have some groundbreaking, earth-shattering knowledge. You do not need to be a superstar. I'm not any of those things. You have information that is unique to you, and that's what makes it valuable to other people. Now, there is still so much I could say about this. My brain is exploding. But I think I've been talking for a very long time already today. This has probably been the longest video I've ever made like this. But if you've liked this type of thing, you found it interesting or valuable, please let me know. I've actually decided, because this is as long as it is, I'm going to also put it into a podcast format, I guess you could say. I am starting my own podcast. Not really. It's more just, if it's a more convenient way for you to listen to this type of long form thing, it's going to be available for you to listen to that way as well. So you can find a link down below for that if that interests you. And if I continue to create more long form stuff like this, I'll make sure it goes there as well. Now, if I could just put a cap on this whole thing, a sentence to finish it off, a period, if you will. Money is a byproduct, not the goal. Financial independence is a byproduct, not the goal. You are the goal. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me here today. I wanted to basically sum up this incredible week of talking with all of you, and I hope I've done a good job here. So thank you, and take care until next time.